She's the daughter of one of the most powerful preachers in the world. But when the controversy around Bishop T.D. Jakes exploded, Sarah Jakes Roberts was left in tears. Now, after months of silence and speculation, she's finally speaking out. And what she reveals about her father, the church, and the pain behind the pulpit is absolutely heartbreaking. You won't believe what she just said and why it's shaking the faith community to its core. When your last name is Jakes, you don't just carry influence. You carry expectation, reputation, and pressure. For Sarah Jakes Roberts, daughter of the iconic Bishop T.D. Jakes, that weight has followed her since birth. She's a celebrated author, preacher, and voice for women around the world, leading with grace through her ministry, Women Evolve. But recently, all eyes have turned not to her sermons, but to her silence. After allegations, criticisms, and controversy began swirling around Bishop T.D. Jakes, many wondered, where is Sarah? Why hasn't she spoken out? Is she distancing herself or protecting something deeper? Well, now the silence is broken. In a recent podcast appearance and a string of emotional social media posts, Sarah Jakes Roberts opened up not just about her father's controversy, but about the pain, the confusion, and the spiritual wrestling that's been happening behind the scenes. What she shared left fans in tears, critics stunned, and followers asking what really happened behind closed doors. In this video, we're unpacking everything. What the controversy around Bishop Jakes is really about. How Sarah Jakes Roberts responded in private and finally in public, and why this moment is changing how people see faith, family, and leadership in the Black church. Stick around because this is where it gets real. For over 4 decades, Bishop T.D. Jakes has been one of the most recognizable and revered figures in American Christianity. From founding the Potter's House in Dallas to authoring best-selling books and producing Hollywood films, his reach has extended far beyond the pulpit. But with great visibility comes intense scrutiny, and recently the scrutiny reached a boiling point. It started with financial questions. Longtime critics and former members began raising concerns about how the church's wealth was being used. Posts circulated across social media, questioning whether donations were being reinvested into the community or into luxury lifestyles. Then came a viral clip where Bishop Jakes appeared to make comments that many interpreted as politically charged, possibly even manipulative toward his congregation. That clip hit platforms like TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and YouTube, and the internet exploded. But it didn't stop there. A former staff member anonymously released documents and emails allegedly tied to mismanagement and controlling behavior within Potter's House leadership. While these documents haven't been verified by independent sources, they spread like wildfire, raising serious concerns about internal operations and spiritual abuse. Allegations included staff being punished for asking questions, pressure to maintain appearances over authenticity, even claims that Sarah Jakes Roberts herself was pulled into internal power struggles within the church. Suddenly, the Jakes family wasn't just under fire as spiritual leaders. They were under fire as a brand. For many followers, this was devastating. Bishop Jakes had been a father figure to countless Black believers. His sermons on healing, entrepreneurship, and empowerment had lifted millions out of mental and emotional darkness. To even consider that there might be truth to these allegations was unthinkable. But while the controversy around Bishop Jakes was trending online, Sarah stayed silent. She didn't post. She didn't preach about it. She didn't defend her father, nor did she condemn him. And that silence only fueled speculation. Was she hurt? Was she hiding something? Or was she waiting for the right moment? Well, that moment came. In Chapter 2, we'll break down the exact moment Sarah Jakes Roberts finally opened up and the tears that revealed far more than any statement ever could. When the controversy surrounding Bishop T.D. Jakes reached a fever pitch, the public waited, some demanded, and others begged for Sarah Jakes Roberts to say something, anything. But what they didn't know was that behind her silence was a storm. The breakthrough came during a recent live recording of her podcast, where Sarah sat in front of an intimate studio audience. Dressed in soft tones, eyes heavy with emotion, she looked into the camera and said the words that left the room completely silent. There's a difference between protecting someone you love and covering up pain you haven't fully processed. Then she paused and the tears began to fall. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a slick Instagram reel. This was raw, human, unfiltered. For the first time, Sarah acknowledged that she had been deeply affected by the conversations surrounding her father and that she had chosen silence because she was, in her words, trying to survive it. She went on to say, "People think just because we're leaders, we're exempt from being broken. But I had to sit in my own pain because the little girl in me wasn't ready to speak. I wasn't ready to face what people were saying about my dad, about my family, about me." The room erupted in applause, not because she gave answers, but because she gave honesty. Sarah admitted that the past few months had tested her in ways she never imagined. She shared how she struggled to balance her loyalty to her father and the growing pressure to publicly respond. At one point, she said, "It's hard when your hero is human, and it's even harder when the world is waiting to crucify him before hearing the whole truth." What made the moment so powerful was not just the emotion. It was the clarity. Sarah wasn't offering a denial or a defense. She was offering a confession of complexity. The tension of being a daughter, a leader, a public figure, and a human being all at once. She talked about the late-night calls with her father, both of them praying, crying, and trying to understand what God was doing. She revealed that some conversations within their family were difficult, heartbreaking, and necessary. This wasn't just a moment of vulnerability. It was a turning point for many who watched. It was the first time they saw Sarah not just as a preacher or influencer, but as a daughter in pain. Her tears weren't weakness. They were revolutionary, especially in a culture where leaders are often expected to be untouchable. And while she didn't offer all the details people were hoping for, what she did offer was more powerful than any headline. Truth wrapped in grace. But here's the twist. After the podcast aired, Sarah's emotional admission sparked an entirely new wave of criticism. Some saying she said too much, others saying she said too little. After Sarah Jakes Roberts' emotional podcast appearance, the video began circulating rapidly, clipped, shared, dissected across platforms. Instagram Reels showed her tearfully confessing. TikTok commentary ran wild with interpretation, and YouTube reactors began uploading their takes within hours. And as expected, the reactions were divided. In fact, the response revealed just how fractured the faith-based community had become around this controversy. On one side were her loyal supporters, those who saw her vulnerability as a bold act of spiritual maturity. They applauded her honesty, her restraint, and her refusal to air dirty laundry just to please public opinion. Comments like, "This is what real leadership looks like." She didn't defend or deny. She gave us her truth, and that's enough. Sometimes pain doesn't need a mic, it needs space. Pastors like Dr. Anita Phillips, Dr. Darius Daniels, and even gospel artists like Jonathan McReynolds reposted the clip in support, reminding followers that leaders bleed, too. There was an outpouring of empathy from women, particularly in ministry, who saw their own silent struggles reflected in Sarah's tearful moment. But on the other side, it got ugly fast. Critics accused her of deflecting, of using emotional appeal to distract from the real questions. Some claimed she was hiding behind soft language to avoid accountability. Others flat out questioned her spiritual integrity, suggesting she was more committed to protecting her father's reputation than standing for truth. One popular Christian YouTuber even said, "Sarah cried, but she didn't clarify. Where's the transparency? Where's the repentance? The church deserves better." Even worse, some began digging into her past. They brought up her teen pregnancy, her divorce, and tried to weaponize her old wounds as proof that she was always too messy to be a leader. It wasn't just criticism, it was character assassination. And yet, Sarah stayed quiet. For over a week after her podcast, she didn't respond to the backlash. No tweets, no statements, no corrections. She went silent again. But this time that silence seemed intentional, not fearful. She let the storm pass. Insiders close to her ministry say that during this time, she focused inward, hosting private prayer calls with her Woman Evolve team, limiting her public appearances, and even postponing an upcoming speaking engagement to, as one source said, grieve privately before she speaks publicly again. But here's the twist. The backlash didn't break her. It amplified her. Within days of the criticism, Woman Evolve saw a spike in podcast subscribers. Her YouTube views tripled. Women from around the world began sharing their own stories of protecting flawed family members, trying to balance faith and pain, and feeling unheard in church spaces. Sarah had unintentionally sparked a movement, a conversation about what it means to be faithful in the gray areas, to love someone while holding them accountable, to speak truth while still honoring the people who raised you. This wasn't just about Bishop Jakes anymore. This was about how the modern church deals with imperfection. But in the background of all this, the question still loomed. Was Sarah holding something back? And what did she mean when she said, "The little girl in me wasn't ready to speak"? Long before she ever stood on her own stage, Sarah Jakes Roberts was the daughter of a giant. From the time she could walk, her last name came with pressure, expectations, and public scrutiny. Her father, Bishop T.D. Jakes, wasn't just a preacher. He was a cultural icon, a man who filled arenas, a spiritual father to millions. But at home, Sarah wasn't a follower. She was a daughter watching her father navigate power, fame,